Let's talk paramotors. I felt compelled to do a video on the technological and maintenance aspects of owning probably one of the greatest things to come into mankind, aka a paramotor, but really dive into the in-depth aspects that have worked for me. And I guess why I felt like doing this video was I'm going on nearly 11 years plus of flying this particular unit. I don't even know how many hundreds of hours that I've put on it. And I'm commonly asked, well, how many times have you rebuilt it? How many times has it blown up on you? How many times have you had engine outs? The answer is 0. You know, who knows? I could be just this one-off, lucky anomaly that's had the world's most reliable paramotor. But I'd also have to say certain aspects of maintenance that I've done have contributed to it. Also, certain aspects of maintenance that I have not done also contributed to the longevity of this paramotor. And that's kind of a weird thing to say, but what I mean by that is, when we'll go into the depth talk about that, is there are certain things that have worked for me that have made this last as long as it has. When you think 11 years, the average paramotor pilot probably replaces their unit maybe every 3 years, maybe 5 tops, but realistically most of my friends are swapping them out every 2. Now, don't get me wrong, the development of the paramotor has evolved significantly since me purchasing this brand new in 2015. The new Monster 185, the power output alone, just the raw thrust alone from that unit is like a one-way ticket to heaven. It is it's just incredible, the power that they're making. And yet, the Vidarazis, although I think they've addressed that issue, we're cracking exhausts at, you know, some guys are getting 10, 15 hours before the exhaust went kapowie. I've had other friends that have flown other units that have blown up at hour 30. And yes, this is a Polini 190, which didn't have the best reliability history when it first came out. However, this one somehow has completely exceeded my expectations when it comes to general paramotor reliability. In fact, it has gone so far. At one point I was waiting for something to break and I'm like, it came to a point I'm like, I'm just impressed you start. And it starts and it makes power and it takes me into the sky every single time. It's truly been amazing. But there are attributes that I think that I've done to this paramotor that has contributed to its longevity. And as I mentioned earlier, there are also attributes that I have not done maintenance-wise. These are commonly given a manual or a POH as the manufacturer states what should be done for optimum engine reliability and longevity. Well, at hour 100, one of those aspects, as mentioned, is to rebuild the bottom end crank bearings and replace parts of the crank end piston, such as the wrist pin bearing and probably the piston rings as well are mentioned in there. I've never taken the head off this paramotor, ever. The only thing that I've actually done in the 11 years of owning this, 2 carburetor rebuilds, which that is kind of standard. Today's gasoline is very caustic. Probably one of the worst, in my opinion, when it comes to just the volatility and the corrosiveness of the fuel. It's very high. I'll get a little bit closer to this. But to begin, what this unit is, this is a Polini Thor X190. This was originally designed on this frame, which is a Fresh Breeze Thorax frame. Phenomenal. It was one of the very first eras of weight shift and active harness technology. There are some attributes about this frame that are, well, you know, don't try not to lose a hand in one flight design, but it has truly been probably one of my favorite paramotors that I've owned over the years. Probably one of those attributes I love about this is pockets, harness comfort, giant fuel tank for those really long flights. But the heart of this paramotor is what has truly impressed me for so many years. I mean, every single time that I go to start this, it not only starts, but it makes phenomenal power. So I'm going to share some tips and tricks that I've utilized over these years that I felt that has contributed to the longevity of this particular paramotor, but would also transcend into any other two-stroke paramotors. Two-stroke paramotors is probably the most common types of power plants used in the paramotor world. Number one, the power output compared to the actual weight of the unit is phenomenal. There are some four-strokes that have been developed. The Bailey, which sounds amazing, it works good. I think even several other manufacturers, but they're heavy. Rebuilding them is expensive. Rebuilding these is very simple, not really expensive. So the heart of this is designed by Polini. This is made in Italy. This is a very common engine manufacturer for two-stroke, go-karts, racing, mini motos, any real big power plants that were used for motorsports. This was the manufacturer. They got their heart into designing aircraft engines, and they had a so-so track record. I had several friends that blew up their Polinis after so many hours, had a big old hole in the piston. And that made me kind of realize, well, what are they doing that's causing this? Temperatures are a big factor when it comes to these types of engines. There's a fine line where there's too little heat, too much heat. Two-strokes inherently will run better and make more power up until they blow up or seize up. It's a weird phenomenon, but it is very true. I've seen it especially in the dirt bike world and the jet ski world. They will literally make more power up until the point they grenade themselves. Temperature is a big factor to consider. I'd say that's one of the most viable things for longevity on a two-stroke. And how you monitor that? Well, let's start with the oil. These don't have their own oiling systems. You have to premix the oil. Two-strokes have an oiling system that's inducted through the carburetor into the crankcase, lubricates all the bearings, cylinders, piston rings, and then is ignited into the induction and compressed, and you get the kaboom for power. Where a traditional four-stroke has its own separate oiling system, and the fuel-air ratio is inducted separately on its own into the compression or the cylinder head. So oil is a pretty big factor to consider. You're going to get a billion answers on what is the proper oil to run in your two-stroke. Some guys will say, oh, this has been working for me. I add this to my pancakes in the morning. I'm still alive. This is the best stuff. I bathe in this stuff. There's no great answer as far as oil. You could just run a quality oil that has a proven track record. Believe it or not, and I'll show you what oil I'm running. And I am no way endorsed by these guys whatsoever. I probably don't want to be either. I'm just kidding, but really, you can get this at your Walmart. You can get this at your O'Reilly's, any auto parts store. Just regular Lucas semi-synthetic, smokeless, two-stroke oil. Can you run other stuff? Sure. You can run the most expensive stuff such as Motul, AMSOIL, Dominator, all that stuff. However, we did go into the topic of flash points in relation to the oil that you're running. That is a real thing to consider. This has a relatively low flash point, and just Google it and do a little research, because I'll just ramble on about what is a good flash point to use in your oil. However, this has worked flawlessly for the last 11 years. I think where it comes into a viable thing to pay close attention to is the POH, or the operating handbook. Sorry if I call it a POH, it's an aircraft term that I use all the time. They stated 50-to-1 oil ratio on this from the factory. I disagree with that. I think that's too lean. I did a test at 50-to-1 versus 32-to-1 and 40-to-1. 50-to-1 had the highest temperature on my CHT, same RPM, same temperature outside, within 5 degrees buffer. And on my thermometer, I had almost a 35-degree temperature difference when it was 50-to-1 versus 40-to-1. So do some due diligence on what the manufacturer says to run, and I always go just a few points a little bit richer. I'm at high altitude, so I'm at over 6,000 feet, baseline, and commonly fly higher. Temperatures are a huge factor to consider. Oil ratio, type of oil, your oil mixing ratio. I do 40-to-1. Manufacturer said do 50-to-1. 40-to-1's worked great, and my temperatures are literally 30 degrees cooler on a lot of aspects. Monitor these temperatures. That's another thing that I would say get into detail with. Is very important. You can run anything when it comes to monitoring. Obviously don't go with like a T-move variant, but who knows, technology is getting better. I run a run leader. I can do my EGT, which is exhaust gas temperature, very vital on a two-stroke, as well as CHT, also very vital, cylinder head temperature. This little probe goes right into the spark plug, right on the head, monitors your cylinder head temps. There are guys out there that are running 450 degree cylinder head temperatures. And they are literally cooking their engine and they don't know it because it is running phenomenal. As I said earlier, two-strokes run wonderfully up until their grenading point. So he has no idea. By gosh, my paramotor is climbing better than ever, and then kaboom, engine's toast. Monitor your temps. Your ratio of which you run this is very important. A friend of mine and I went in back and forth. The factory settings from a carburetor, don't touch it if it works good. His Monster 185, Kevin, giving you a shout out, said that, hey, I'm not touching this carburetor. And he hasn't. He's put a ton of hours on it, running it, and doesn't touch the carburetor. It's the factory settings, and that has worked for him. When I got this, I just had to adjust it for altitude. It is an older style carburetor, Walbro, high, and you're low. I synchronized it to where I had a good RPM band, but my temperatures weren't too high. I could actually adjust it a little bit leaner, and I'd watch my power a little bit more, but the temperatures rose, so I backed off just a hair. Temperatures have been the lowest I've ever seen. I could be wide open throttle, and they are perfect. I never get a spike in temperature. The only time I've ever seen that happen was when it was 90 degrees out, and I was in a real slow climb. It was just a hot day, and even then it didn't even crest anywhere to what I've seen some of these guys running temperature wise on their cylinder heads. Watch your temperatures. Go spend the money, get a nice monitor. It'll save your bacon if something's wrong, and you'll know something is wrong. Two-strokes are sneaky. They run better and better and better until they blow up. I will engrave that to anybody that owns a two-stroke. They do. They just run phenomenal up until they blow up. So settings on carburetor, oil ratio, temperature, vital aspects to consider for engine longevity. Okay, we're gonna go into detail about that. When I said earlier, 11 years of flying this, the only things I've ever had to replace on this, the starter went out the first 10 hours of owning it, and I might have just had a fluke of a starter because this one has been headache-free for eternity that I've had it. That's the only thing that's failed, and I've rebuilt the carburetor twice. Gasket-wise, well, manufacturer says you need to replace the bearings at 100 hours. Well, guess what? I am beyond 100 hours on this. I don't even know how many hundreds of hours I have on this now. I just came back from Moab, flew through some pretty unforgiving terrain where if I had an engine out, it's a 50-50 ratio whether it be a hospital visit or not. Was I worried about this? Not one bit. It ran great, ran phenomenal. I always say, if it ain't broke, don't touch it. Yes, the manufacturer said replace this, replace this, replace this at this amount of time. I disagree with that. Leaks are a big thing to consider. Yes, the manufacturer says replace your carburetor gasket. This is your intake manifold gasket where air is inducted through the carburetor. This is essentially your engine block. Always look for leaks. This is where lean issues can happen. You want to watch this like a hawk. Lean kills paramotors. If you have a bad gasket, you got the perfect oil fuel ratio going in, and you're starting to suck air through that bad gasket, replace it. It's 4 bolts, 15 minutes, cheap insurance. Consider that. I would not touch the bottom end bearings or the cranks. I feel like from the factory, they're great. Don't touch it. Don't plan on touching this, and I won't touch it until something, if something breaks, then something breaks. It's completely outlasted beyond what it should have. So gaskets are vital. Oil ratios are vital. Oil air mixture settings are vital. Oil quality, sort of vital, not really. Gasoline, let's talk about gasoline. Once again, you're gonna get a million answers. They say, oh, grandma's, vegetable oil out of her garden from her rutabagas is the best fuel that I've ran. I've run pump gas on this. Yes, there is a catch. Ethanol is terrible. There's no better answer to put. beyond that. Ethanol is just, it's not good. Especially if they sit. I burn through gas on this quick enough to where it doesn't. In fact, I would recommend, if you plan on having your Paramotor sit a while, go put in avgas. Now there's a catch with avgas. Yes, it's leaded. That's not really a big deal. These don't run hot enough for lead to fully burn off, and you will get a little bit more residue and caking from the 100 low lead, but it's very stable. I would say avgas is the most stable out of all fuels, then ethanol free, and then God's worst enemy is ethanol. I try to run avgas every other tank because its pump is right across the street from my hanger. But I also have run ethanol free, and I've also run just regular 91 without issues. If you do run on 91 a lot of times, this is where I would say be very mindful and cognizant of your fuel lines. These right here will get super brittle. Replace these every 2 years. These are your primer bulbs, vital. I would say once a year, 2 years at max. I've seen carburetors plug up and the debris going in there, and then you got a very big lean issue that you're dealing with because the debris of this breaking down your fuel line. And then obviously your fuel filter, replace that, you know, just check it. These don't usually get a lot of debris, but stuff breaks down. Reducing the fuel flow into your engine is going to cause a lean issue, thus, kaboom. Preventative is a big thing, and you can prevent a lot of stuff by simply running and checking your fuel lines and make sure that stuff is malleable. Moves easy, it's not stiff. Ethanol or gasoline with ethanol will do that to you. It'll just eat stuff. It ate a lot of the carburetor diaphragms for the fuel pump and just the needles, valves. It's nasty stuff unless you're running a lot of it. However, I have found one method that has helped immensely with carburetor longevity. 2 rebuilds, 5 years, in about 5.5 years of a carburetor. That's pretty darn good. The stuff that I add, and I run this in everything, and once again, I'm not endorsed whatsoever by any of these brands. They're just stuff that works amazing for me. Marvel Mystery Oil, believe it or not. Stuff's been around since Charles Lindbergh was trying to fly his butt cheeks across the Atlantic. And it works. I mean, it really does. Believe it or not, on the airplane, I run it in the airplane religiously. But I also run it in the Paramotor religiously. Simply 2-3 capfuls in your fuel tank. This stuff does wonders on saving the rubber components and the stability of the rubber components and just keeping the engine clean. I don't know what they made this stuff out of, but it's not snake oil. It has worked for me over the years. This is a testament of it working. My airplane and its reliability also has been a testament of it. Marvel Mystery Oil, it works. I just run a couple of capfuls in the tank. So these are aspects that I felt that have worked over the years. Another thing to consider, when gaskets, as I mentioned earlier, I'm just getting out before I get off topic. Check these. I'm starting to get a little bit of oil seepage right here on my exhaust. It's relatively clean. I don't see too much debris, but you're gonna, at some point, I am gonna have to replace this gasket here. This is just your exhaust gas. Still kind of vital, and why I say it's vital is the 2-strokes are reliant on this fancy science of the expansion chamber. This is where the power is made on a 2-stroke, is the expansion and the acceleration of the exhaust gases. That's where you get the term power band to some degree, is because partially due to the expansion chamber. If you have a slight exhaust leak, the efficiency of that expansion chamber is being reduced. So I would take a good look, just to see if it's leaking, inspect it, tighten your bolts. I do a once a year tightening of all my bolts. The only thing, it's so funny, Chris Montez, I'm giving you a shout out, mentioned tightening head bolts, and that is something that I've kind of failed on. I didn't touch it. He's like, have you taken your cylinder head off? I didn't touch it. And we're actually gonna give a shout out to a company because they sent me an amazing tool that we're gonna look, because I have not taken the cylinder head off of this. And I wasn't planning on it. The gaskets aren't leaking off the head. So the cylinder head is right here, this upper part. I just don't want to take it off. I'm not seeing any oil. I took the cover off potentially could damage the gasket if I take it off, so I just didn't touch it. There's no reason to. It works great. It starts up first pull. I'm not going to touch it. Don't fix it if it's not broke. Yes, POH stated tighten the head bolts and replace the gaskets every, I think, 50 hours. Yeah, I didn't do that. And yet it's running good. Would I say tighten the head bolts and double check that? Yeah. I would probably say that's something that I've failed to do as far as proper maintenance goes, is check your head bolt tightness and torque them correctly. But today we're going to take this bore scope. I'm going to show you this tool that I got. It's quite exciting from tool-wise. And we're going to see how bad the inside of my cylinder head looks and the piston looks. I don't know what to expect. This, like I said, I have hundreds and hundreds of hours on this unit, and I've never had it apart. So we're going to find out now what it looks like with this tool. Okay, so as I said earlier, I've never taken the cylinder head off of this. I've never done a top end rebuild. We went earlier discussion of maintenance and things to do. I would at some point advise top end, such as piston rings, are kind of a good guarantee to increase engine compression and overall performance, as well as the proper cleaning of the cylinder walls themselves. I would say that's one part of maintenance that I guess I could have done better about in the 11 years of flying this. Is it probably wouldn't have hurt to have done new piston rings, and maybe upper end gaskets. I've never done that on this just because it always starts. It still makes wonderful power all the way through the RPM range. One trick I would say really helps with two strokes is they like a wide variety of RPM. They also like to be at high RPM. That's where they make their most power, is at high RPM. They like that. The engine runs cleaner. It really just, if you do have an older paramotor or a newer paramotor, cycle them all the way through the RPM bands, use wide open throttle, run wide open throttle for at least a minute if you can, because it really, they like it. That's what these engines are designed for. That's where they get their optimal performance, as well as it really just kind of helps clean things out. So we discussed earlier what oils and mixture rates that we like to run at, what ratios, things to kind of look out for, as far as just always do a pre-flight before you fly. I do that like clockwork even on this. I just check for bolts, tightness, all that. More in-depth stuff is such as my buddy Chris mentioned, tightening the head bolts is kind of crucial. I have never tightened the head bolts on this. Are they probably looser than they should be? Probably. My guess is he just recently did his, and I have way more hours on this than the motor that he did. I guarantee these are probably less or I should say under spec than the actual tightness should be. But one thing that I'm actually kind of curious to do, I've never done it before, and I'm really curious what it's going to look like. It could go either way. Is I'm going to do a bore scope with a camera and look into the cylinder head of this motor, which I've never done. So 11 years of flying, never been apart, and we're going to see how bad or how good the inside of the piston head on the top and the cylinder walls themselves look. I'm actually quite curious what it's going to look like. I have a feeling that it's going to have a decent amount of carbon buildup on the piston itself, but it could look really good. It also could look really bad. A lot will tell. So a shout out to this company because they sent me this product. DXZ TAWS sent this bore scope camera. It's phenomenal, and I'm actually really excited to use it. I'm gonna end up using it on my airplane when we do the annual, but why not try it on the paramotor? Just the quality layout of this is quite impressive. I mean, you look at this. So let's get this out, and we'll take a look at what the cylinder head inside and the piston looks like of one of these old, beyond flown Polini 190s. As you can see, the quality of this packaging is phenomenal. Here's the display screen. This is the device we're going to use. So let me get this set up here real quick, and let's check out what this motor looks like. I will post up a link if you are interested in one of these. They're quite useful, especially anything automotive, but you can use it for just about anything else. This will probably be the first time a paramotor has been bore scoped, so let's see what this looks like. Okay, I just got the screen. It's actually just two pieces. The screen literally just slides right onto this device, and you simply just power it on, and it's ready to go. A lot of neat features about this is you can actually record, take photos, you can increase the brightness, clarity. There's a lot of options, so you can actually really be in depth about what you're looking at. So we're going to take a look at this. So I just loosened my spark plug. Take that out real quick. Don't like any debris getting in there if it doesn't have to. Now, speaking of spark plugs, change these once a year and make sure you're running the right heat range on your plug. There's a multitude, hotter, colder. That's very important on two strokes. It'll not only run better, but it'll run cooler and burn much better. So you can see this has a built-in flashlight, which is actually pretty neat. We're going to stick it right down in this hole here real quick, so you can see. And then let's just sit there and see what it looks like. Surprisingly, I thought there'd be way more carbon buildup on that piston. Cross-hatching is still very visible. You can see right there. This is the exhaust side. On the intake side, it's right over there. All of it actually looks really clean. The one thing that I will notice though is I bet, like I said, the cylinder head, the swap cameras. Let's see what the cylinder head, oh yeah, there you go. So, I mean, this is to be expected. Hundreds of hours, never have taken this off. I would say that this probably is hindering performance a little bit. You can see the carbon buildup here. This is right on the top of the cylinder head. See if I get a better look. That is hilarious. But, I mean, to be honest, it could be worse. The plug also looks fairly good. So that kind of gives you a good perspective of what an 11-year-old Paramotor engine and hundreds of hours looks like. Kind of gives you a good perspective of what to expect. Yeah, you could take off that cylinder head and clean that carbon off. The piston looks great. Cylinder looks great. So, wonderful product, like I said, by these guys right here. And like I said, I'll post the link down, linking to their product. It's amazing. It's called the AGC 500L. It's very user-friendly, and we just bore scoped this Paramotor engine, and the results are pretty amazing. You can actually record, switch a bunch of modes, take photos. Like I said, you can swap the cameras. Just overall, the quality and everything about this product feels great. All right, folks, well, that's that. This is probably a very long-winded video, but just a general consensus of maintenance items, what to look out for, what to do, preventative stuff, things that I say aren't necessary. Like I said, I'm never going to do the bottom end on this unless absolutely necessary. I think from the factory it runs the best, and when you start splitting cases and messing with things that kind of, I don't know, is not the same as it was from the factory, but that's just my opinion. If you have any questions or you have any comments, this is a Polini Thorax 190. This is from Germany, made by Fresh Breeze. Phenomenal build quality. I would fly another one in a heartbeat. Germany does modify their Polinis just a little bit by this sound dampener and compression dampener right here. So who knows, that might contribute to this longevity. But overall, this is, like I said, for the millionth time, 11 years of flying. I've never had it apart. I've never had an engine out. 2 carburetor rebuilds or refreshes, new gaskets, and 1 starter. And it has truly been a phenomenal Paramotor, and I don't plan on getting rid of it. So if you have any questions on 2-stroke maintenance, tips, tricks that have worked for you on your Paramotor, I'm seriously eager to hear this, because there's a million different ways and there could be a method that works 10 times better. And yes, my cylinder head probably could use a cleaning after we saw that bore scope video. So thanks for watching. I'll post the link down in the comment description on the tools and some of the oils that I use. And thanks and happy flying.